Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the multiple poems of the Johnson edition of the poems of Emily Dickinson. We're at poem number 60, Like Her, the Saints Retire. Now, there's been a whole lot of speculation about Emily's love of the riddle. And in many ways, I think it takes us all the way back to the famous riddle of the Sphinx, the very idea that in Greek mythology, riddling and wordplay is always so central. Remember Odysseus telling Polyphemus the Cyclops his name is nobody, and of course all of that. And young readers of that text love that idea that he can play that word game. He will blind Polyphemus. Polyphemus will scream to his brothers from behind the locked up cave, nobody blinded me, nobody blinded me. The idea of naming is as well, I think, central to how we've read already 60 poems of Emily Dickinson. And she said early on in her life, in a famous quote, she said it this way in a letter to her pal Sue, quote, "In a life that stopped guessing, you and I should not feel at home." This idea of guessing, this idea of riddle play is central to the way that we read so many of Emily's poems. And of course, as is often the challenge with the poetry of Emily Dickinson, she doesn't always come out and tell us exactly who or what it is that she's riddling about. We'll see that, for example, in this poem. Many have called this a nature riddle poem, and we'll see several of these in the poems of the Johnson edition, the 1,775 poems. It's a lot of poems that we'll cover before we're done, right? Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, again, Chats with Emily, our playlist. And I'm hopeful that you are already exposed to the introductory set of comments, and I'm hopeful as well that you've worked with us with the preceding 59 lectures. We just finished with A Little East of Jordan. Now, the background information here, this poem really relies on who the her or the she is. Are we talking about a person, or are we talking about a thing? Some scholars like that this is a botany riddle, that is to say fuchsia, the famous purple and red flower, is exactly what she's talking about. But I think this is an argument as to why we love Emily and why we have so much fun reading her stuff. And in the end, we don't have to be right. I'm going to go ahead and read the poem, assuming that she is talking about fuchsia and her love of flowers. We'll see some other flowers mentioned here in the poem as well, and that will be fun as well. So let's go to work with it. Like her, the saints retire in their chapeau of fire, martial is she. Like her, the evenings steal purple and cachunal after the day. Departed both, they say, gathered away, not found, argues the aster still, reasons the daffodil, profound. Notice it's the last word of the last line, profound exclamation point. Well, what exactly is it that is happening in this poem? I think this is a wonderful example of Emily's brilliant genius, her creative play with words, which is why children, even young children, love Emily's stuff so much. Take a look. We'll begin with the question of who the her is. Like her, and again, we begin with the simile. Let's go ahead and read it as a fuchsia, as a flower, that red and purple flower, and enjoy then how she plays the game out. Notice the saints who have those halos, they're often purple or crimson, right, as the saints are returning to heaven in paintings or whatever. As, like her, the saints retire in their chapeau of fire. By the way, chapeau only gets used one time, right, the cap or the hat of fire, the halo, right. Martial as she. Now, when we hit poem 65 here in a little bit, we'll hear about this saints thing. I can't tell you, but you feel it, nor can you tell me. Saints with ravished slate and pencil solve our April day. So we'll come back to this idea of saints. When we get to the word martial, we're going to mess around with poem 118, and we'll hear it, how martial is this place. So this idea that life is about competitiveness, competition, fighting, right? We'll hear it as well, of course, in success is counted sweetest. And then notice the repetition of like her. Like her, the evenings steal, in other words, the sun sets, purple, and cachunal. Now, when we hit poem 581, we'll see cachunal again. That is to say that little insect where we get red dye from. And it'll run something like this when we get there to poem 118. To poem 581. It'll run something like this. Let me just share it with you. To races nurtured in the dark, how would your own begin? Can blaze be shown in Cochinelle or noon in Mazarin? We'll come back to this idea of the color and the power of colors we've seen already in her stuff. Then we'll finish with after the day exclamation point. And then quotation marks, departed. In other words, it's over, right? Both saints as well as, of course, the idea of sunset. It's over, it's evening. Both, that is to say, saints and obviously sunsets, they say, departed, gone, exclamation point. And then the only time she uses the IE in all of her poetry is right here, i.e. gathered away. That is to say, they're gone. But gone to what degree? Temporarily or forever? Now, I'm going to argue this is a poem about hope. Okay, so notice, gathered away, not found, and then comma, and then the last stanza argues the aster still. So now we're going to get asters and daffodils, obviously flowers that Emily loves. For the word argument here, we're looking for evidence. In other words, what evidence do we have that once things are gone, they're gone for good, either in saints or sunsets, because both of them we have this sense, though there will be more saints and obviously more sunsets, right? Argues the aster still, reasons the daffodil profound. In other words, what's the argument here? Well, I think so much hinges on the word profound. And we're going to see this word in a whole lot of important poems. We're going to see it in poem 822. We're going to see it in poem 168, Profound Galaxies. We're going to see it in poem 1058, in poem 1090, in poem 672, when we hit that one, and finally in poem 695. In all of these, Emily clearly loves that word, profound. Well, what exactly is going on with a riddle like this? Well, I think the argument that she's making is that when you look at, if we're going to assume that in fact it is this, this fuchsia plant, that we're looking at the idea, why is there reason to hope? Why is there reason to believe that even departure is only departure that's temporary and not permanent? Everything in nature then is what? What is she really saying? I think it's everything in nature is about cycles. It's cyclical, right? We can never be certain exactly what's actually gone, i.e. hope. And I think that's what really this poem is all about. At 2b, of course, we could be totally wrong. The nature riddle, the essence of the nature riddle is that we're not totally sure. But I love that we get to guess. I mean, hey guys, if there's anything we're doing in this collection of conversations, these chats with Emily, it's that I'm hopeful that we can treat Emily's poetry with the energy and grace and goodwill that she asks for. Remember, judge tenderly of me in one of her important poems. And I'm hopeful that we can play that same game. At 3a, well, I love to think of Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, a poem that I'm pretty convinced Emily was very influenced by. You'll remember it, if winter come, can spring be far behind? And I think that same spirit is here in this brilliant little poem. Finally, in the end at 3b, how do you read this poem, and to what degree do you believe that hope is eternal, even though at times when it's gone, it's temporary? Thank you.